What if the serpent in the Garden of Eden wasn't the villain of the story? What if everything you've been told, from the betrayal to humanity's fall, was only a shallow version of something far more profound? Today, we'll embark on a journey to unravel one of humanity's oldest mysteries, a story that could forever change how you see Eden, the serpent, and the events that unfolded in that sacred garden. The version of the tale we've all heard seems so simple, doesn't it? The serpent is the enemy, Eve the one who disobeyed, and the forbidden fruit the ultimate temptation. But what if I told you that beneath this straightforward narrative lies a web of hidden meanings? Why did the serpent choose Eve? What was the real significance of the fruit? And most intriguingly, who actually benefited or suffered from the choices made that day? Prepare to leave behind the familiar. We'll dive into overlooked truths, ancient mistranslations, and fascinating cultural parallels that reveal the serpent as much more than a villain. But be warned, once you unlock this perspective, there's no going back. The Garden of Eden will never look the same again. Before we dive deeper, take a moment to show your support by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. This helps us bring more thought-provoking content your way. And don't forget to drop a comment letting us know which country you're watching from. It's incredible to see where in the world these stories are reaching and who's joining us on this exploration. One of the most intriguing and often misunderstood aspects of the Genesis narrative is the word Nahash. This term, used in the original Hebrew to describe the serpent, carries a depth that's been lost in many modern translations. While most people associate the serpent with deceit and evil, the word Nahash paints a far more complex picture. It doesn't merely refer to a snake slithering on the ground. It encompasses ideas of divination, enchantment, and wisdom. It's a term loaded with meaning, rooted in a linguistic heritage that ties it to whispering, hissing, and seeking hidden truths. In the ancient world, serpents were seen not just as creatures of the earth, but as symbols of duality, both feared and revered. They were often associated with the divine, seen as intermediaries between the mortal and the spiritual. Their ability to shed their skin became a universal symbol of renewal, immortality, and transformation. The serpent wasn't just an animal, it was a representation of profound truths. In this context, Nahash emerges as a figure that embodies the tension between danger and enlightenment. Consider this: the serpent in the Garden of Eden doesn't impose its will on Eve. It doesn't force her hand or demand obedience. Instead, it speaks, it questions, it provokes thought. Its actions align with what Nahash represents, a being that doesn't merely tempt, but invites reflection and curiosity. Could it be that the serpent's role was not to deceive, but to awaken? To present a choice that would forever change the trajectory of humanity? Ancient cultures are filled with stories that resonate with this idea. In Mesopotamian myths, serpents often guarded sacred knowledge. In Egyptian traditions, the cobra symbolized divine protection and insight. Even in later Greco-Roman contexts, serpents became symbols of healing and wisdom, immortalized in the staff of Asclepius. When viewed alongside these traditions, Nahash starts to look less like a villain and more like a bridge to a greater understanding, a catalyst for growth and change. This deeper interpretation of Nahash reframes the story entirely. It challenges us to see the serpent not as a simplistic antagonist, but as a necessary figure in the story of humanity's awakening. Through this lens, the Garden of Eden becomes more than a setting for humanity's fall. It becomes the birthplace of our consciousness and free will, an origin story echoed in myths across the ancient world. And as we shift our focus to these parallels, we begin to see how the Serpent of Eden fits into a broader, universal pattern. The question now isn't just about what Nahash means in Genesis, but how this figure connects to other ancient traditions, where serpents symbolize knowledge, transformation, and the pursuit of the unknown. To truly understand the serpent's role in the Garden of Eden, we must expand our view beyond Genesis and look at how serpents were perceived across ancient cultures. They weren't mere creatures crawling on the ground. They were imbued with deep symbolism, often associated with knowledge, power, and transformation. The story of the serpent in Eden is just one chapter in a much larger narrative woven across human history. In ancient Egypt, for example, serpents were both feared and revered. The cobra, known as Wadjet, was a symbol of divine protection and royal authority. Often depicted on the crowns of pharaohs, it was believed to guard the ruler against evil forces. Wadjet wasn't seen as a figure of deception, but as a powerful intermediary between the mortal and divine realms, a protector of cosmic order. When we think of the serpent in Eden, this duality of fear and reverence starts to echo. Was it a deceiver, or was it fulfilling a higher purpose? Similarly, in Mesopotamian mythology, the serpent frequently appeared as a symbol of wisdom and life. The god Enki, a deity of water, wisdom, and creation, was often associated with serpents. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest known literary works, a serpent steals the plant of immortality from the hero, ensuring that eternal life remains out of human reach. This act mirrors the Genesis serpent's role in introducing humanity to knowledge and mortality, a bittersweet gift that changes everything. Even in Greek culture, the serpent appears in transformative roles. The staff of Asclepius, entwined with a single snake, became a universal symbol of healing and medicine, representing the power of knowledge to restore and renew. This connection to wisdom and renewal aligns with how serpents were perceived in many traditions, not as purely evil, but as agents of profound change. These parallels reveal a recurring theme. Serpents were often symbols of duality. They represented both the danger of forbidden knowledge and the potential for enlightenment. This duality is key to understanding the serpent in Eden. Its actions, rather than being malicious, may have been an inevitable part of the human journey. A test, a challenge, or perhaps an invitation to grow. When we view the serpent in Genesis through the lens of these ancient traditions, its role becomes much more nuanced. It is no longer just a tempter, but a figure that embodies the complexity of human choices and the consequences they bring. This complexity sets the stage for us to analyze its actions in Eden with greater depth. The serpent's presence in cultures as varied as Egyptian, Mesopotamian, and Greek suggests that its symbolism taps into something universal. As we delve deeper, we begin to see how these ancient connections enrich our understanding of the serpent's strategy in the garden and its ultimate impact on humanity. When we think about the serpent in the Garden of Eden, we often focus on the moment of temptation, when it convinces Eve to eat the forbidden fruit. But this interpretation oversimplifies the serpent's actions. What if the serpent wasn't merely manipulating Eve through direct temptation? What if it had a deeper, more subtle strategy, one that involved provoking thought and challenging the status quo? The serpent's approach to Eve was not about coercion, but about asking the right questions at the right moment. Consider how the serpent addresses Eve. Rather than simply telling her to eat the fruit, it asks her, "Did God really say, 'You shall not eat from any tree in the garden'?" This question isn't a direct command or an accusation. It's a subtle nudge, an invitation to consider God's words more carefully, to question the restrictions placed upon her. The serpent doesn't offer an alternative or a solution right away. It merely plants a seed of doubt. This strategy is fascinating because it mirrors the process of critical thinking. Instead of imposing a belief or a decision, the serpent encourages Eve to examine the situation more closely. In a way, it's like the serpent is offering Eve a chance to make an informed decision. It's not forcing her hand, but rather nudging her to reflect on the boundaries set before her. This subtle shift in thinking opens up a whole new perspective on the serpent's role. Instead of a villain tempting humanity into sin, it becomes a catalyst for questioning the limitations placed on human experience. What's more, the serpent never tells Eve directly to disobey God. It simply raises a question that challenges the existing narrative. By doing so, it pushes Eve toward a deeper understanding of her own desires, her curiosity, and the consequences of her choices. This approach shows that the serpent's role in the garden wasn't just about bringing downfall, but about initiating the journey of self-awareness. By questioning the restrictions on knowledge, the serpent sets in motion the pivotal moment of transformation for Eve, and by extension, all of humanity. It was a strategy rooted in intellectual engagement, not in deception. The serpent's challenge wasn't to manipulate Eve, but to awaken something within her. As we continue to explore this strategy, we'll see how it fits into a much larger narrative about the pursuit of knowledge and the complexities of free will. The moment Eve and Adam eat the forbidden fruit marks a profound turning point, not just in the story of Genesis, but in the symbolic narrative of humanity itself. The act of consuming. The fruit wasn't merely about disobedience. It was about embracing the transformative power of knowledge, with all the consequences that came with it. This moment is layered with meaning, representing a shift from innocence to awareness, from passivity to active participation in the world. The text describes that their eyes were opened after eating the fruit. This isn't a literal statement, it's deeply metaphorical. Their newfound awareness wasn't just about their physical nakedness, it was about recognizing the complexity of existence. They suddenly understood choice, morality, and consequence. In essence, they became fully human. Before the fruit, they lived in a state of unawareness, protected but unchallenged. The fruit introduced them to a world of dualities, good and evil, life and death, joy and suffering. Think of this transformation in the context of human evolution. Humanity's progress has always hinged on our willingness to seek knowledge, even when it comes at a cost. Fire, for example, was a discovery that transformed our species, but it also brought danger. The same can be said for every major leap in technology or philosophy. Knowledge empowers, but it also carries responsibility. The story of the fruit mirrors this universal truth. With great understanding comes great consequence. What's particularly fascinating is that the serpent never lies about the fruit. It tells Eve that her eyes will be opened and she will be like God, knowing good and evil. And indeed, that's exactly what happens. This challenges the notion that the serpent was deceitful. Instead, it reveals the act as one of revelation rather than trickery. The fruit wasn't poisonous, it was powerful. It was the catalyst that pushed humanity into a state of self-awareness and freedom, albeit at the cost of their idyllic life in Eden. This knowledge was transformative but irreversible. It meant that Adam and Eve could no longer exist in blissful ignorance. They had entered a world where choices mattered, where their actions had consequences, and where they were truly responsible for their own destinies. This transformation didn't just alter their lives, it set the stage for the entirety of human history. As we explore further, we'll see how this moment connects to ancient myths and the universal human journey toward growth through challenge. The story of the serpent, the fruit, and the transformative knowledge in Genesis isn't an isolated narrative. It shares striking parallels with myths and traditions from ancient civilizations around the world. These connections reveal that the themes of forbidden knowledge, divine testing, and the pursuit of enlightenment are universal elements of human storytelling. Exploring these parallels helps us better understand the serpent's role and why it resonates so deeply across cultures. Take, for instance, the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest known pieces of literature. In this Mesopotamian tale, the hero Gilgamesh embarks on a quest for immortality. Along the way, he discovers a plant that grants eternal life, only to have it stolen by a serpent while he rests. The serpent's act ensures that immortality remains beyond human reach, a theme that mirrors the Genesis narrative. In both stories, the serpent becomes the gatekeeper of knowledge or power, underscoring its role as a figure that defines the boundaries of human potential. Similarly, in the Sumerian tale of Dilmun, often called the Garden of the Gods, there is a paradise-like setting where humanity lives in harmony. However, access to divine knowledge or immortality is restricted, echoing the idea of Eden as a space where humanity's ignorance ensures its innocence. The parallels between Dilmun and Eden suggest a shared cultural fascination with the idea of a primordial garden, a place where humans and gods interacted, yet where humanity's limitations were ultimately tested. In Egyptian mythology, serpents played dual roles. The cobra, associated with Wadjet, was a protector and a symbol of divine wisdom, while the serpent Apep represented chaos and destruction. This duality captures the essence of the serpent in Genesis, a figure capable of bringing both enlightenment and disruption. Similarly, the Egyptian concept of Mayat, the balance of order and chaos, reflects the tension introduced when Adam and Eve ate the fruit. The knowledge they gained disrupted their harmonious existence, but also laid the foundation for human progress. Even in Greek mythology, the serpent is central to stories of transformation and revelation. The staff of Asclepius, entwined with a single serpent, remains a universal symbol of healing and medicine, representing wisdom and renewal. In the tale of Prometheus, the act of stealing fire from the gods to empower humanity draws a parallel to the serpent's role in introducing Adam and Eve to knowledge. Both figures are seen as transgressors who challenge divine authority to elevate humanity. These myths collectively point to a recurring archetype, the serpent or similar figure, as a mediator of profound change. By connecting the Genesis story to these traditions, we see that the serpent isn't merely a villain. It represents the inevitable tension between divine boundaries and human ambition, a theme that has shaped storytelling across civilizations. As we move forward, this broader context enriches our understanding of the serpent's complexity and its dual role as both challenger and guide. The serpent in Genesis is a figure shrouded in duality, embodying both wisdom and chaos, enlightenment and disruption. This dual nature challenges the simplistic view of the serpent as a purely malevolent entity. Instead, it suggests that the serpent serves a complex and necessary role in the narrative, one that resonates with themes of growth, choice, and the human condition. In many ancient traditions, serpents occupy a similar position, representing both creation and destruction. In Hindu mythology, the serpent Shesha holds the universe on its coils, symbolizing balance and stability. However, serpents like Kaliya, defeated by Krishna, represent chaos that must be subdued. This duality isn't about labeling serpents as good or evil, it's about acknowledging their power to disrupt the old and pave the way for the new. The serpent in Genesis embodies this same tension. On one hand, it introduces Adam and Eve to knowledge, allowing them to perceive good and evil and take responsibility for their choices. On the other, it disrupts the harmony of Eden, leading to their expulsion and the introduction of suffering into the human experience. This dual role raises the question, was the serpent's intervention a necessary catalyst for humanity's evolution? In Gnostic traditions, the serpent is often viewed as a liberator rather than a deceiver. Some texts interpret the serpent as a figure offering humanity a chance to break free from ignorance imposed by a jealous deity. This perspective flips the traditional narrative on its head, portraying the serpent as a guide to enlightenment rather than a harbinger of doom. The duality of the serpent mirrors the complexities of human existence. Knowledge, like the serpent, is neither wholly good nor bad. It's a tool that depends on how it's wielded. It can lead to wisdom and growth, but it also carries consequences. The serpent in Genesis serves as a reminder that with enlightenment comes responsibility, and with freedom comes the weight of choice. As we approach the conclusion of the serpent's story, its impact on humanity's destiny becomes even more profound, shaping not only the narrative of Genesis, but the very foundation of human experience. The serpent's role in Genesis is not merely a subplot, it is the linchpin that sets the entire human story into motion. Without the serpent's intervention, Adam and Eve might have remained in Eden forever, shielded from knowledge and free will, but also devoid of growth, challenge, and true individuality. This singular act of introducing knowledge didn't just alter the course of their lives, it laid the foundation for humanity as we know it. In many ways, the serpent's presence is essential. It acts as a force that disrupts the status quo, forcing Adam and Eve to step out of the confines of innocence and into a world where their choices truly matter. It's the moment humanity leaves the garden and enters the real world of struggle, creativity, and progress. In this sense, the serpent becomes more than a mere antagonist. It's a figure of transformation, embodying the inevitability of change and the price that comes with it. When viewed through this lens, the serpent's role transcends the moral binary of good versus evil. It highlights a universal truth. Growth often comes from challenge. Humanity's journey, with all its triumphs and tragedies, begins not with complacency, but with curiosity, courage, and the willingness to face the unknown. The serpent catalyzes this journey, making it a central figure in not just the Genesis narrative, but in the broader story of human development. The serpent's legacy is one of profound impact. It shaped humanity's destiny, turning the Garden of Eden from a static paradise into the starting point for a dynamic, ever-evolving journey. And as we reflect on this, we're reminded that the serpent's influence is not just a relic of the past, it's a metaphor for the choices and transformations we face in our own lives every day. Before we wrap up, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more thought-provoking content like this. Share this video with the first person who comes to mind. If someone specific popped into your head just now, it might be a sign that they need this message too. And don't forget to comment below where you're watching from. Let's keep this conversation going and spread the knowledge far and wide.